My hay baler was sinking, not stuck, not muddy, not maybe we can pull it out tomorrow. Sinking. $9,000 worth of equipment sat half submerged in brown water, leaning sideways like a shipwreck in a field that had been bone dry the night before. I stood there with coffee still warm in my hand, boots sliding into the muck, and the smell hit first wet clay diesel rotting grass, that sour underground stink that tells you something has gone very wrong. By sunrise, 2 acres were underwater. 60 years of my family's land had turned into a shallow lake because a woman in the HOA next door decided my field was cheaper than fixing her own problem. She didn't call, didn't knock, didn't offer a dime. She sent a backhoe a permit and then a handwritten note about a small misunderstanding. My name's Everett, and what matters here isn't who I am, it's what I own. 43 acres on the rural edge of central Virginia land my grandfather bought in 1961 with cash and a handshake. My father ran cattle here. I run hay lease pasture to a neighbor's horses and keep a kitchen garden that feeds us all summer. The back of the property slopes into a natural drainage swale that for 60 years quietly carried rainwater where it needed to go. A quarter-mile south sits Ashford Crossing, one of those polished subdivisions carved out of old farmland. Matching lawns, fake wood fences, a clubhouse nobody uses, and an HOA so petty it could probably fine you for breathing in the wrong shade of beige. I never lived there, never signed into it, never owed it a thing. But I watched them fine people over wind chimes, trash cans, even shutter colors. Their president was Margot Whitfield, silver bob, pearl earrings, white Lexus, the whole polished package. By spring of 2021, she'd decided Ashford Crossing had a stormwater problem. She wasn't wrong. Their retention system was undersized. After hard rain, the lower streets flooded, residents complained, reserve funds were thin. So Margot went shopping for a cheaper answer. The first move came by certified mail, HOA letterhead, talk of regional drainage management and cooperation. 4 uses of the word cooperative, not 1 use of the word compensation. They wanted to reroute part of their overflow through the southern edge of my property. I stood at my kitchen table reading that letter and made the mistake a lot of rural people make. I assumed good faith would meet good faith. So I wrote back politely. I explained that my swale already handled natural runoff during hard storms, that engineered discharge onto agricultural land without a serious study was a bad idea, and that if they wanted a real solution, I'd discuss fixing their own retention pond. I mailed it certified, kept a copy, waited 3 weeks. The answer came from a county code officer named Dexter, who showed up with a pending variance notice. Margot's HOA had filed for a drainage variance. Hearing date set. They had checked the box saying notice was provided. I went to that hearing in a clean shirt with photos, diagrams, and a typed statement. The room smelled like burnt coffee and bad decisions. I made my case calmly. Asked for 60 days to commission an independent hydrology review. Then Margot stood up with a glossy engineering report from Richmond, said community benefit like it was holy scripture, and smiled the whole time. The board voted 4-1 in her favor. Out in the parking lot, the one man who dissented leaned toward me and said, "Get yourself a water rights attorney. Fast." That's how Cornelia Voss entered the story. Cornelia was sharp and direct. She listened to everything, then said the sentence that changed the whole case. "Don't stop them yet. Let them finish. Let the rain do the talking." So I waited. And while I waited, I documented everything. When the contractor showed up with a mini excavator and cut a new drainage channel along my southern edge, I stayed back and filmed it all. Then I started pulling records, old site plans, subdivision approvals, stormwater filings. And that's where the first crack showed. Ashford Crossing's original approval required all stormwater to stay inside its own engineered system. No discharge onto neighboring farmland. Cornelia brought in a hydrologist named Gareth Finch. Gareth walked my field, checked the new ditch, and found 2 things. First, in a major storm, my swale would back up and saturate more than 2 acres. Second, the new channel cut 16 inches over my property line in one section. That wasn't just bad planning, that was trespass. Then September arrived with the leftovers of a Gulf storm and dumped 9 inches of rain over central Virginia. I drove home through sheets of water, came over the rise behind my barn, and just stopped. My lower field was a lake. Fence posts half underwater, the new ditch running like a fire hose. My balers standing hub deep in brown water. I took photos, took video, and called Cornelia from the rain. How bad, she asked. My field smells like wet clay and death, I told her. And my equipment's underwater. She paused, then said, Good, we file Monday. That was the moment the story turned. What looked like my loss was actually the evidence. Cornelia sued the HOA, and Margot personally nuisance trespass property damage drainage tort violation of the original stormwater covenant. Their insurance lawyer called almost immediately and offered $14,000 to make it disappear. Cornelia countered at $147,000. Then Margot made the mistake that blew this thing wide open. She sent letters to my neighbors calling me difficult, and the lawsuit frivolous, all on official HOA stationery. Cornelia laughed when she read it. She just handed us defamation in writing. And here's the twist Margot never saw coming. Those letters didn't isolate me. They built my side. My neighbor Dale looked at his copy and said, She thinks I don't know you, Tobias. And Renata Okonkwo, who ran a small organic operation nearby, called to say the HOA had been messing with them too. Earl Pruitt, a retired Army man Margot once fined over a trash can, shook my hand in my driveway and asked what I needed. What I needed, it turned out, was witnesses. By October, this was no longer one farmer against one HOA president. Renata had files. Earl had county connections. Gareth kept studying the drainage. Cornelia kept digging. And then she found the real bomb. Ashford Crossing's retention pond had never been built to spec. The original subdivision approval required a system capable of handling a 25-year storm event because the site drained toward adjacent farms. What got built was closer to 70% of that capacity. Somewhere along the line, an amendment slipped through without being checked against the original condition. The HOA had inherited a non-compliant stormwater system, and Margot, who sat on the county planning subcommittee, either knew it or should have known it. Then Gareth found something uglier. By forcing runoff into my field, the redirected water was changing the subsurface water table in a way that could push groundwater pressure back toward the lowest homes in Ashford Crossing, the basements on Willowmere Court. So the water's going back, I asked. Cornelia was quiet for a second. Water always goes somewhere. She sent a formal warning letter to the HOA's attorney. They ignored it. November rain hit, then December brought a cold 4-day storm. My field sensors logged the saturation perfectly. And Willowmere Court got water in 3 basements. Wet carpet ruined drywall, a dead water heater. That's when a homeowner named Fitzgerald came to my door and asked what I knew. I sat him at my kitchen table and showed him everything. An hour later, he stood up and said, I think I need my own lawyer. He wasn't alone. Soon, several homeowners had retained counsel. Inside Ashford Crossing, people started asking why HOA money was being thrown at lawyers instead of fixing the problem. Then, because power makes some people reckless right before it breaks, Margot called Gareth directly and tried to intimidate him over his report. He recorded the call. By January, the county's administrative review was ready. The board meeting was packed. Neighbors, homeowners, Gareth, Cornelia, me, Margot, sitting polished and composed in the 3rd row like she still believed she could manage the room. Then the review got read into the record. The county confirmed the retention pond had been built at roughly 70% of permitted capacity. The drainage variance that sent water onto my land had been approved based on a system already out of compliance with its original conditions. The variance was rescinded. The HOA would be cited and required to retrofit the pond at its own expense. The room went silent. Then a Willowmere homeowner asked whether the HOA had been warned about basement flooding before the damage happened. The county answered yes. Fitzgerald stood up and read his statement. When he finished, the whole room felt different. The final blow came from the board chair, who asked Margot one simple question in her role on the county planning subcommittee. Did she have access to the original 2017 documents? Margot tried to dodge. The chair wrote something down and said the county attorney would review any conflict of interest concerns tied to Margot's involvement. No shouting, no big movie speech, just a woman with a pen in a quiet room and an empire cracking in public. Margot resigned from the planning subcommittee 11 days later. She stepped down as HOA president the next month. The civil case settled 3 weeks after that. $212,000 to me, full soil remediation, recovery funds for lost agricultural productivity, removal of the drainage channel, written retractions of the defamatory letters, separate settlements for the Willowmere homeowners. The HOA's insurance carrier paid. By spring, crews had filled the ditch, regraded the field, and worked life back into the soil. Recovery takes time. That might have been the lesson that stuck hardest. Land doesn't care about titles. Water doesn't care about polished reports, and people who use power like a shortcut usually forget one thing: once the truth gets enough evidence behind it, it moves just like water does. Quietly at first, then all at once. The field looks good this year. The hay came in clean. My sensors are still logging because I like proof. And every time I walk that lower stretch at dusk with frogs calling and the ground finally firm under my boots again, I think about how close she came to getting away with it. So here's what I want to ask you when somebody with a title uses rules like a weapon. Where's the line between justice and revenge when you finally hit back? Tell me what you think. Have you ever dealt with an HOA, a county board, or some petty little authority figure who thought you were too ordinary to fight back? Drop your story in the comments and tell me, was what happened to Margot justice, karma, or something in between?